Dracula in the book has a mustache, you know, and of course, you know, we all know that Vlad the Impaler has a mustache too. Find a Transylvanian nobleman without one. Try to find a Romanian from the 19th century or earlier without one. They're, you know, very popular.
Nous sommes en présence du vampire. Nosferatu.
Dracula's been told a bazillion times, and Nosferatu twice before, but the Murnau film is such an important film in cinema history. It kind of invented horror movies, and it also, the impact that it has had on how we tell Dracula and all these other iterations is massive. So, like, you know, as passionate as I am about the source material, like, you know, you have to have a reason to do it. And if the female protagonist is the central protagonist, it can have the potential to be a lot more emotionally and psychologically complex than a kind of adventure story about a real estate agent. But I would say that the Murnau film is actually fairly psychosexual. It's coded, it's 1922, you can only go so far with things, but there is like something erotic, you know, in Ellen's interactions with Shrek as this creature. There is something there. But yes, obviously we go a lot further. You know, when I start to sit down to write the screenplay and I see, yeah, of course, like Ellen's a somnambulist, and sleepwalkers in the 19th century were thought to have, you know, be able to see into another realm.
Viens à moi.
It is the person who she can connect with on the level that she can't connect with all these other people. But he's a demon lover. He's an abuser. He's a fucking vampire, you know? So it is a tragic love triangle, you know? And in, you know, her agency to find, you know, grace through sacrifice, there is also like revenge, you know? But there is also fulfillment.
Viens à moi. Viens à moi. Entends ma supplique. Viens à moi.
You know, because of the evolution of the cinematic vampire from Shrek to Lugosi to Kinski being sad and the vampire becoming more and more sympathetic until finally we have Edward Cullen. How do you make a vampire scary again? And so I went back to the folklore when people actually believed in vampires, and the early folk vampires, look like a corpse. They don't change into a young, handsome man. They just are like visually closer to a zombie maybe. And that was exciting. So then the question is, what does a dead Transylvanian nobleman look like? Which influences to some degree the bone structure, but like this Hungarian finery that he wears from the 16th century. The hair styles but we still give him Shrek's fingernails because the long fingernails are part of the vampire folklore. We give him kind of the shape of Shrek's skull and a couple other things because we want to respect the past and where we came from. But I mean, look, Dracula in the book has a mustache, and of course, we all know that Vlad the Impaler has a mustache too. Find a Transylvanian nobleman without one. Try to find a Romanian from the 19th century or earlier without one. They're, very popular.
Count Dracula.
Jonathan Harker, you have been expected and are welcome in my castle.
Thank you.
Come in.
It's completely absurd that if you showed up to a castle and you had someone that looked like Max Schreck or Klaus Kinski, you would run out of there. And the same thing if you showed up and your house guest was an ambulating corpse, you would leave. Yeah, I mean the vampire needed to be scary. He needed to have like really intense phallic energy, and that's not gonna work if he's like running around a courtyard carrying his coffin like a surfboard. Murnau was figuring things out, and it was early cinema, you know, and obviously like we crank the carriage so that it's like ghostly, and he overcranked it so it's like, you know, whatever. But that was just you know, learning what kind of works, you know. It's early cinema. Because you're dealing with this influential horror movie, you're having a dialogue with that movie, but also horror history. And I felt like, you know, this is the first time that I was going to employ jump scares in a very traditional way, you know, and that was an interesting challenge to do. And to, you know, and you know, 3 of the jump scares are super traditional. You know, as soon as the scene starts, you know what's happening, and it's going to probably play out exactly how you think it's going to play out, you know. And that was fun, you know.
Il vient à nous.
Il vient nous trouver.
Il vient.
Qui vient, mon enfant?
I like to explore who we are and where we're going by where we came from. And I guess I also have like a nostalgia for, you know, the past in general, but a nostalgia for a time when people were more interested in the sacred rather than the profane. But I wouldn't want to live in the past, and, you know, so I can explore it in cinema.